But first, we're going to have an election. So I'd like everyone to be able to come out. We do have 7 candidates, and you'll get to you'll be introduced to them in a future newsletter. Okay, probably early December. So we'll have that, the election, and then holiday party. So woohoo, be fun. And then that'll be, our outgoing for a few of us from the board. So speaking of that, Bob and I, who will be outgoing people from the board, would like to have kind of a farewell dinner, if you will, January 3rd. And I'm going to announce all this in the newsletter too. But January 3rd at the Plow and Stars, it's a favorite of his and mine. So we'll have a little celebration as well as celebrating 15 years of APT that we've been around. Okay. So Bob and I have been around a little bit longer than that, not with APT, but so again, more to come with that. I believe it's official, be actually official tomorrow night. But I've decided to be the committee chair of the NFTGA conference. That's the National Federation Conference. And we're going to host it here in Philadelphia. This will be in 2025, hopefully to launch the 2026 celebrations here in Philadelphia. So a lot more to come on that in the future. Okay. And also requests for committee members to help me because I'm going to need a lot of help. Okay, I think that's just about it. Dues, we have that discounted rate, $40 you can pay tonight. You can pay online. That runs through December 31st. So please, after that, it's going to be $60. So it will be helpful to pay your dues early, get that discount. And I think that's about it. Did I miss anything? Update on Sicily. Well, there's still only 4 of us going. Myself, Karen Sutton, Nina, and David, who's not here tonight. Unusual for David not to be here. So we just got an update from his. Can you hear me okay? Because I feel like I'm echo. Okay, sorry. We got some more information today about the workshops and different things. It looks like it's an amazing trip. And we might have someone in the back, another one whom I'm enticing to come with us as well. So anyway, but the 4 of us will definitely be there. We have all of our, stuff lined up, our flights and hotels and whatnot. So we'll be doing that in Sicily. And again, promoting Philadelphia for 2026. So we'll have a lot of ideas, hopefully, coming back. Yep, Pam. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of kudos lately. If you saw my link, Travel and Leisure, in the last email I sent out, they had a nice article about, visiting Philadelphia. Got, one of the best cities, 5th best city. I'm there, yeah. So yeah, we're getting a lot of good things, hopefully good things, right? Okay, there you are. So here's our speaker for tonight. Let me just roll down here. So Mr. Adam Waterbear DePaul. Okay, he is the chief of the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania, where he serves as tribal storykeeper and director of education. Okay, so I'll let, if you want to introduce or say more about yourself.
Wanishi, thank you. Yes, I am one of the 4 chiefs of the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania. One of the roles I have is Director of Education, and that leads me to give very many presentations. I present schools, colleges, universities, historical societies, whoever calls me. I've given hundreds of presentations on our people and culture. excited when I challenge with something new. And I have that tonight. I'm really looking forward to what we're talking about. I'm going to give you an incredibly brief introduction to our people, so you know who I'm here representing, who the Lenape people are, and then we're going to move into sites of interest in the Philly area. And that's something I've never been asked to talk about. So I enjoy being able to talk about that. Hopefully, it can help boost that already very impressive reputation. There are some incredible things here to check out. But very brief, if you don't know, the Lenape people, we're the indigenous people of right where you're sitting, Eastern Pennsylvania, Southern New York, all of New Jersey, and Northern Delaware. Sound okay? Can you hear me in the back? Excellent, okay. So this is what is called in our language the Lenape hooking. And that word, Lenape hooking, that is, that's okay. That word Lenape hooking, that's just Lenape, us, with a suffix stuck on the end that means the place where this thing happens or the place where this occurs. And I like to bring that up as a little language lesson because one way that you will still encounter our culture very often in our homelands is through place names. When you see that NK ending on a town name or a river name or a mountain name, it's a very good indication that comes from the Lenape language. Places like up by me, I live up in the Poconos, if you know Mauchunk up there in the Jim Thorpe area, Minisink, Lift it up. Ooh, wow, I'm really loud now. Is that better, Zoom people? Excellent, okay, sorry about that. Great. So I can't see you, Zoom people, sorry about that. So yeah, places like Passayunk, Minisink, Manayunk. In our language, Manayunk means the place where people go to drink. And of course, our people named it that for the confluence of the waters there. But I understand it's a tradition that they carry on in that town today, and tradition is good. So people live their entire lives in our homeland, sometimes in towns that are even named in our language and still have no idea who we are. And of course, that story of our erasure begins with colonial contact. And now I'm going to zoom ahead a lot of time, tens of thousands of years of our pre-colonial history, and then a couple hundred more years of after first colonial contact, because we have, a short time today. I want to talk about William Penn very briefly. People have kind of heard legends of William Penn, and they ask me, how much is true about what we hear about what a great guy William Penn was? This is one legend to which there is very much truth. William Penn really did have a good relationship with our people. He sought to be friends, to be respectful, and to treat our people fairly. Now, William Penn was by no means a perfect human being. There are aspects of his life that we need to examine and acknowledge, not the least of which his involvement in the slave trade. So I don't hold him up as something more than human. But in relation to his relationship with our people, he really did go about it in a very good way. Our relationship with William Penn is something our ancestors celebrated, and it's something we still celebrate to this day, which I'll talk about in a minute when I get up to what our nation is doing today. So where things go wrong is in just one short generation with William Penn's sons. William Penn is not here for a very long time. A lot of people don't realize that. He comes over, touches down, sets up some good ideas and some good structures, then he's back over the ocean to go take care of other business for the crown. However, what he leaves here are his descendants. His descendants stay here. And his sons, his grandsons, and their line, they have no interest in participating in the spirit of friendship that William Penn developed. They want our land and they want us out of it. How many people here have heard of the walking purchase? Wow. I am blown away. The walking treaty, There's all kinds of names for it, and we have a couple of our own. Um, yeah. So I won't even, did I get a lot of hands on Zoom too? By any chance? No. Um, really quickly, I won't go into detail. In a crowd this size, maybe there's 20, 30 people in this room. I typically expect maybe 4 or 5 hands. And I teach at college and I talk at college. It's crazy. You are an educated group and it does my heart good. Very briefly, if you don't know, the walking purchase is the most popular example today of how Penn's sons manipulated our people out of our land. We had agreed to give them a bit of land, mostly out of respect for their father, for William Penn, so they could live here as our neighbors. And through a number of manipulative devices, they ended up tricking us into signing away about 1,200 square miles of land. It's about the area of Rhode Island State. If you're one of the people who haven't heard about the walking purchase, you can plug that into your browser and find out all the details. It's quite a story. But the walking purchase is just one of many underhanded land dealings like this, where our land is manipulated away from us on paper. Then, after a while of this generation and the next generation accumulating these documents with our signatures on them, it comes time to get our people out. And they have no reserve in how they do that. I'm sure many of you can't read this from that far away. But this is a artifact we have at our cultural center, which is up in Easton, Pennsylvania. And this is a Pennsylvania Gazette from 1764. And front page, first column, which is what I have blown up here, the prime real estate of the newspaper, John Penn, who is Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, publicizes prices that he will pay if people turn in Lenape scalps or bring in live Lenape people to be brought into captivity. And those of our people brought into captivity are very typically then sold into forced labor, either here in our homelands or we're packed into boats and shipped across the ocean to do forced labor in the East Indies area, where colonialism is spreading in that direction. So it becomes evident to us immediately that not only are we no longer participating in that spirit of friendship that William Penn wished, but that it's dangerous for us here. And it's at this point that many of our people are forced to leave our homelands. Some people see the hunters coming their way and pick up their family clans and run to protect their families. Other people dig in and try to put up resistance and have battles. And there are bloody battles here as some of our people try to resist being pushed out. But many, not all, but many of our people are forced out of our homelands. And those people go in all directions. They go anywhere where they feel like they might be safe from colonialism. Now, I have to emphasize this to my students. Sometimes I get the idea that, like, they have an idea that Native Americans were often forced out of their homelands, but they have a perception like, well, one day the Lenape picked up from Pennsylvania, walked out to Wisconsin, sat down, and that's how they were removed. And I have to emphasize to them, no, these removals are the process of years and decades, and in some cases, centuries of continuous removal. We get out to Western Pennsylvania, we look around, things seem okay. We start to reestablish our community, reestablish our horticulture, but of course, in a short time, the frontier catches up with us. We're uprooted and chased farther. Ohio, Indiana, Kansas. When we get out to Kansas, a group of our folks break off and they say, this direction isn't working. They go southward and they end up all the way down in Texas. And for a long time, there's a Lenape community in Texas. So Lenape people spread out all over the country and continent. Today, there are 5 nations of our people. And yes, there are 6 icons on the screen. I'll describe that. Oh, is that better? Could they not hear me? Just wave me if I need to do that. So there are 5 nations today of the Lenape diaspora who represent those of our people who were forced out of their homelands. 3 of those nations are in the United States. Two of them are in Oklahoma. That's the Delaware Tribe of Indians and the Delaware Nation in Anadarko. One of those nations is in Wisconsin, the Stockbridge-Munsee. And then another group of our people got pushed just over what's now the United States border and ended up in Canada. And we have two nations in Ontario, Canada. That's these two. And our people are also, besides those five, those five nations are the only federally recognized nations of Lenape people today. I won't delve into that now, but we'll have question and answer. If you want to hear more of the politics and recognition practices, I'm happy to talk about that. In addition to those five federally recognized tribes, we also have many other Lenape communities in places along our dispossession trail that broke off and started small communities. We have a community in Kansas. We have people in Ohio. So that is a very short and to do no justice story of our diaspora. But meanwhile, many other of our people remain here. And there's a number of ways that can happen. Some of our people go into hiding. Some of our people, unfortunately, are brought in on the bounty of John Penn or other bounties like it, and they remain here as somebody's property. But the most numerous way that our people remain here are through intermarriages, almost exclusively between Lenape women and colonial men. Colonists seem to take a very strong liking to marrying our women. And there are a number of reasons for that involve cultural differences and a certain exoticism of these new people they discovered. But the primary reason is because our women were the masters of agriculture. They had just incredible knowledge that they absorbed from tens of thousands of years of working this soil like no other. The colonists, of course, were on foreign soil, so they didn't know what would raise and what wouldn't, how the seasons worked. So not only did many of them marry our women, but they were dependent on our women to survive and thrive here the way they did those first few decades and longer. Now, in those early days, many of these households would be raised biculturally. Children, for instance, would be raised to speak Lenape and German or Lenape and Swedish or English. But as time goes on and we get to the era of the walking purchase and certainly the bounties, this is no longer the case. Now that our people are being hunted and forced out and the colonists want to call it this land, their land and no other, Lenape culture is no longer welcome here in the colonies. So these families that have been entrenched with the colonists for decades, now, if they want to stay here, they have to put their heads down and hide every aspect of their Lenape heritage. We can't speak our language. We can't dress in our traditional dress. We certainly can't hold any religious or spiritual ceremonies. Our beliefs are considered heathen. Our language is considered barbaric. And if you want to stay here, you have to talk, dress, and otherwise act like the dominant culture, like a colonist, and hope that nobody calls you out and then forces you out or worse. This is how our culture is passed. However, despite this, our ancestors refuse to let our culture die. They refuse to let it be forgotten. They find ways to pass our culture down, almost predominantly through the oral tradition. Grandparents teach their grandchildren, parents teach their children. There are other examples, and we have an exhibit that we put together with the University of Pennsylvania that is now at our cultural center that illustrates some of the physical ways that we would pass down culture. This, for instance, is a stencil, very much in a German style. It looks very much kind of like a traditional German stencil, but this stencil was only found in houses where Lenape people lived, Lenape German marriages lived. And if you analyze this, I won't go through all the details, but you'll see that there's Lenape symbolism in these symbols. The center dot often represents the soul in our culture, and this is a dancer. So we would find ways to hide and blend signifiers to other people that would come in the household. So to signal to other Lenape people that this is a Lenape family, and also as a visual reminder to ourselves that our culture is still here. This is one of our most chilling exhibits. It's a doll, and many dolls like this were passed down from Lenape grandmothers to granddaughters. And on the front, it just looks like a little happy colonial doll. It's got nice little textile dress here and everything. But if you turn it around and if you lift the hair up on the back of its head, and again, you probably can't see this from in the back of the room, but there's another face stitched into the back of the head under the hair. It's purposefully put there to be hard to see. It's in the same color as the material of the head. But that was for children to turn around and look at and serve as a reminder that you have these two faces and that you can never forget your Lenape face, but you have to keep it hidden. More? I'm going to swallow it soon. Is that better? Okay. So this process of passing our ways down in secret through the oral tradition, this continues for tens of hundreds of years, even through all those most incredibly dangerous times of the Indian boarding schools. Are we familiar with this phenomenon? I see many nods. I see a couple head shakes. If you're not, again, this doesn't do it justice, but long story very short, these schools were set up to bring Native children into them. This is not just a Lenape phenomenon. It happened all over the US and Canada. Bring Native American children into them and train their culture out of them so that they could be returned to society as a civilized human being. And when I say train their culture, some of these schools just recently have made big news in Canada because they are still excavating mass graves where children were disciplined so harshly that they were just dumped into these graves because they didn't abide. And these children were often forced from their families under coercion or literally just forcing children out of their homes. Even when our people were going through this, our ancestors refused to let our culture die and kept telling those stories. And as a result of that, today, there is still a thriving Lenape culture and many communities here. And it's been very historically recently that we've felt somewhat comfortable sticking our heads out and saying, hey, you know what? Many of us are still here and never left. This is my nation, the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania, and that's the heritage of my nation. We represent the homeland Lenape who never left. And my nation is not the only nation. Right over the river in New Jersey, in North Jersey, you have the Ramapo Mountain Lenape. In South Jersey, you have the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape. And in Delaware State, you have the Delaware Indian tribe, or the Lenape Indian tribe of Delaware. Our four nations today represent those homeland Lenape who never left. Today, our nation is very focused on revitalizing those parts of our culture that were most devastated by colonialism. One example is our language. Our language is so incredibly endangered that we actually don't have enough speakers left to be considered an endangered language by linguistic standards. We're a category below that. Now we have an incredible clan mother, Shelley DePaul, my mother, who is our director of language. She's dedicated her life to revitalizing the language. This is a book by a wonderful anthropologist published by National Geographic that talks about her language classes, revitalizing the language. She developed the textbook, and today we teach 5 or 6 online classes a week to try to revitalize our language. So we're very passionate about revitalizing things that have been damaged. And we're also very passionate about continuing our role as environmental stewards. It's very important to our people to protect the river, protect the watershed, to protect our lands. And one way we've been able to do this in today's era is through the Rising Nation River Journey and the signing of the Treaty of Renewed Friendship. There's much more information about this on our website. If you want to get that, there's a whole page dedicated to this. You can actually read all the words of the treaty. But another long story, very short, back in 2002, we decided we wanted to get all our friends together that we were already working with and get a community of people who would acknowledge the Lenape people as the indigenous people of this land and work to protect, to steward our homelands. So we drew up the Treaty of Renewed Friendship that basically asks for those two things. And to celebrate and to spread the treaty, we went out to our sacred river, to the Delaware River. We went all the way to the top up in Hancock, New York. We went out there in kayaks and canoes, and we paddled every inch of the river down to where it dumps into the ocean in Cape May, about 4 weeks on the river. And then all along the river, we would stop and we would hold public treaty signings. We would invite anyone from the public to come sign this treaty and commit to these goals. At the end of that first journey in 2002, we had 17 organizations come together to sign on, and many of them are wonderful environmental organizations like the Delaware River Keepers, Lower Delaware Wild and Scenic, Friends of the Wissahickon, the Audubon Society. We decided to continue doing this every 4 years because it was so incredible to see, 17 different organizations come and sign the treaty. So we've been doing this every 4 years since. And not this past, but summer 2022 was our 20-year anniversary of the journey and treaty signing. And at the end of that journey, we had over 150 organizations and over 300 committed individuals come together to sign the treaty. Thank you. It's just incredible. And our partners are, like I said, many environmental organizations, but also academic institutions, colleges, universities, school districts, historical societies, senior organizations. We're a culture that has a lot of respect for our elders, and we love giving programs at senior organizations. And something else, one of the other strongest initiatives we have today is to correct the mistake that Pennsylvania has made thus far in never recognizing any of its Native American people. New Jersey has recognized both of its Lenape nations. Delaware has recognized its Lenape nation. Pennsylvania is the only state in our homeland that has never recognized any of its Native Americans, not us or any other of the tribes that lived here. So we've been trying to change that for decades. We have a very strong push right now. We have an online petition and a letter writing campaign. There's also more information about that on our website if you're interested. So I'm going to jump. That's all I'm going to talk at you about our history. Process that for half a second. Think about any questions you have. But put a pin in them really quickly because I want to get to this next part, which is what can we look at today? And I'm sorry, am I speaking to predominantly tour guides? That's what I thought. Okay. So I'm using the right diction if I say what might you want to use as a stop somewhere or tell your people about. Part of, sure. Out of the treaty, out of those 150 and more organizations that have partnered with us, and from other places that we have very good relationships with, whether or not they signed the treaty, many wonderful initiatives and collaborations and projects have come about, and many of them in the Philly area. One that I want to mention right off the bat, do we know the K&T Trail? Now, I have to say this very embarrassingly. I've been coming to Philadelphia for more than 20 years now. I did my undergrad at Temple. But for all that time, I'm still very much a tourist. I get lost and I'm not the best at placing things. But so this is, I thought everyone was going to be like, yeah, we know the K&T Trail. Does anyone know the K&T Trail? Where is it about? If I would say a word that would make it familiar to people.
Awesome. It's on the river. Yeah, Kensington to Coney area. Um, and the K&T Trail is a trail that goes right along the river. It's a beautiful trail, but I guess from what I understand, for a long time it's been kind of overrun. And recently there was a very strong initiative to revitalize the trail. And from what I can tell, they did a wonderful job with it. And one of the things they did is they asked me to come in, and I worked with a local artist in residence at Tacony Lab, partnering with Mural Arts. Her name is Lisa Kelly, incredible artist. And I told stories from our people. And she listened to those stories, and they brought the public in to listen to those stories. And then Lisa collaborated with the people who heard those stories on making artwork all up and down the trail. And now, if you walk up and down the trail, here's a little sign explaining that process. All up and down the trail, there are these beautiful banners that each show a different part of our culture. There's wolf, there's turkey, there's muskrat. There's really big culture heroes from our different stories and cultural legends. And at the top of every banner is the word Lenape hooking. And you know what that means now. So that's one incredible thing. If you say, hey, go walk the K&T Trail, that is really an innovative project, and I'm not aware of anything else like it in Pennsylvania. Another thing I like to bring up is the Wissahickon. We know the Wissahickon, right? So of course you know the Wissahickon itself. Enough said. Go see it. It's awesome. But do we know about the Looking West statue, often called the Tidiaskin statue? Interesting time to visit the Tidiaskin statue. There are problems with this statue, several of them. I am our nation's representative on the board of the Wissahickon, or on the board of directors of the Friends of the Wissahickon. And they approached me about this and asked for our nation's consult on what to do with the statue. Now, the statue itself is a problem because it does not portray Lenape culture. It portrays a generic image that was used in many other pieces of art that is a Western or Plains Indian. So that's a problem, and we're still having a discussion about how to deal with that. But another significant part, here's the statue from the back, was the signage on the statue. I'm going to squint and sit down to read this very quickly. It talks about an Indian, how far up the statue is. It's a Lenape Indian chief. And here's the dialogue. Though some say that this is the Lenape leader Tidiaskin, it's meant to represent a nameless chief. A legend has it, and if you can't see the picture, he's got his hand up. He's like looking, peering over the cliffs. Legend has it that he's watching his people leave in the late 1750s, headed west for someplace less crowded. That's not quite it. It wasn't exactly like we looked around and one day and said, you know, property values are decreasing. Let's go somewhere where we can see a little bit. The story is more than that. Yeah. Well, it was, but yeah. So we collaborated, and the sign has now actually changed. I don't know if you've seen it recently, but they took the sign down. There's a new sign with new words that our nation collaborated on. Now it's a little plaque. It can't go into all the history, but it's much better than it was. It mentions that the Lenape were forcibly displaced from the area, and that those who remained were forced into hiding and assimilation. And it also says this is not it is not an accurate representation of traditional Lenape dress, sculpture, drawn rind, copied designs he used elsewhere. So it brings attention to those things, and thank you. It really, it's a small thing, but it's a huge thing, right? So there's an interesting thing, and people who have seen it before might want to see it again. The East Falls River Landing, do we know where that is? I'm just hoping everybody nods to all of these because I don't. I've been there, but I couldn't tell you how to get there. The East Falls River Landing, aside from being a beautiful access to the river, is one of our treaty signers and partners. In fact, on their website, if you scroll down just past their homepage, one of their pictures there is of our people holding a treaty signing there last summer. And they actually have a box, a speaker box, that you can go up and hit, and it talks a little bit about Lenape history, and it talks about it in our language, which is incredibly difficult to do. I was actually supposed to be the voice on that box, and then at the last minute, I had to go do something else, and they got someone from our New Jersey tribe, one of our few language speakers, to come in. But rare are the opportunities to hear our language, so that's a nice spot to direct people. Manayunk. I don't have any pictures to show you because this is very new and in process of happening, but at the Manayunk Visitors Center, they are working on panels all throughout the center of history of Manayunk and other things about it. And the first panel there is going to be on Lenape history. I think actually my deadline for giving them the panels is next week, so I have to get on that. But you're going to be able to go there and read a little bit about our people, and we're going to be acknowledged as the first people there, and it'll have a brief summary of the already brief summary that I just gave you. Even more exciting, they are commissioning a mural to be painted on the back of a building. I don't know which building. I'm sorry. Again, I'm kind of a tourist myself, but I'm sure they can tell you where. That's going to display our culture, and I've actually given them the name of one of our artists who does mural art. So if that works out, it will actually be painted by a Lenape person. So keep your eye on that Manayunk Visitors Center. That's going to be a place to visit. Arcadia University. There's an incredible branch or organization within Arcadia University called CASAA, the Center for Anti-Racist Scholarship, Advocacy, and Action. I'm actually a resident scholar in CASAA. And the first thing I want to note is if you're not familiar with the CASAA Museum, tell people about it. It is one of those life-altering experiences. Tell people to go check it out. You need to give them advance notice, so they have to plan their visit and tell them they're coming, but they'll have a tour guide take you through it. And what is there right now, it's mostly focuses on African American culture, and we're starting also to integrate Native American culture. But it is a 3 or 4 rooms filled with artifacts of racist, blatantly racist and discriminatory depictions of different cultures. You know, the black-faced, what did they call them? Minstrels, thank you. I was thinking mimics. No, the minstrels, the cigar store Indian. And it's one of those things that you walk into and you physically for a moment get taken aback. But it's important to be confronted with that, and it's a real experience. Now, in addition to that, keep your eye on CASAA because beginning right now, we are building a Lenape exhibit there, and it's going to be absolutely incredible. I'm going to put a pin in that and move forward one space to talk quickly about Haverford Libraries. At Haverford College, Haverford Libraries also puts on incredible, they have an exhibit space, they do great exhibits. And the reason I backtracked a second is because back in 2019, back in the pre-COVID times, we set up an art exhibit at Temple University. It was a great exhibit. We thought it was going to do a year and be done like most exhibits, but after it came down, Haverford reached out to us and said, we'd love to do something with that. So we brought it to Haverford and we expanded it and made it even more incredible. Now, it just recently came down from Haverford, so you can't go there and see it now, but we do many collaborations with Haverford College, the museum, the arboretum there is incredible. And it's always good keeping an ear in that direction to see if people are interested in Indigenous culture. There's a good chance something will be there soon if it's not there now. But after this went up at Haverford, it became a traveling exhibit. So now it's moving around and it's going to Arcadia. It's actually there now in cardboard boxes. But it's going through a new iteration that's going to bring in many artists in residence, people like Lisa Kelly and other people who have done artwork inspired by our nation, in addition to our own art. So keep an eye on Arcadia and CASAA, because that's going to be a place that a lot of people will want to exhibit. The Penn Museum, another thing I can't go by without mentioning. Obviously, Penn Museum is worth visiting just for itself. Many incredible exhibits. They have a strong history with our nation. We had an exhibit there in 2008 that lasted for 3 years. They've done exhibits with our New Jersey cousins. A lot of indigenous culture comes through there in the form of very nice exhibits. And this on our webpage also, you can see Penn Museum's page is still up on the exhibit that they did with us. Lenape gardens are huge. Many people ask us about horticulture, about plant medicine, about food crops, and they want to incorporate that some way. There are many Lenape gardens right under your nose here in Philadelphia. If you're not aware of them, one of the first major one was at the University of Pennsylvania and still is. You can go there and visit, but again, you have to request. I don't think you can just walk onto it. But there's a garden here. There's a whole article about it. Our clan mothers advised on it. It's in the shape of a turtle, which is very important to our people in our creation story. And we grow indigenous plants here, and they have signs in the Lenape language of what the plants are called and what they would be used for. There are gardens like this also at Haverford, and then up north in my area, there's a whole bunch. So, but the Penn one is great, and you can get information about that on our website. Temple Ambler is another place. I know that's a little outside of Philly proper, but it's not too far. Something else to keep your eye on. We do many programs there. We did an incredible healing ceremony when Hurricane Ida came through and did a devastating amount of damage there. Our people came in and did a healing ceremony for the plants, the land, and for the people there that were suffering. And we've continued to come back. Just a week or two ago, I was there for a Spooktober themed event where I got to sit up at a campfire and tell some of our scariest Lenape stories. It was great. So a lot of good stuff going on there. And if you're not familiar, Ambler is a horticultural college. It's like walking through a greenhouse. It's incredible. I would say tell people to go see it while you're in town, no matter what is or isn't going on there. UArts, the University of Arts, is another place I like to bring up. Same as Penn Museum. I don't know what's up there right now. But in any case, they always have wonderful things. I mean, it's the University of Arts. Oops. Of course, they have great exhibits, but we also have many collaborations with them. This is a picture of a time they had us come in. We did a whole day's cultural program. Our drummers came in, our dancers came in. We talked about our artwork, and we are talking right now about having a standing exhibit there. So keep an eye on UArts, because that's a great place. Morris Arboretum. Amazing arboretum in and of itself, just worth going to see. It has an incredible walking trail. It grows largely indigenous plants. In there, I'll come right back to it, because I also want to mention the Woodmere Art Museum. Another incredible museum, great exhibits, without even talking about indigenous culture. Like, these are two places people should go. However, they have a wonderful partnership, and they partner with us very often. I've been at both the museum and Woodmere multiple times, having wonderful discussions and programs on artwork, on craft work. Our clan mothers come in and give beading demonstrations. We are working on building a Lenape Garden at the Woodmere Museum. So whether it's an event or whether it's a permanent installation, you can bet within any month, there's going to be something with Lenape culture going on at one of those two places. These screenshots are from our website, by the way. There's an events page that you can scroll through and see everything we have coming up. That might be good for you to bookmark, because we have a lot in this area. The Barnes Foundation. I'm sure you already tell people to go to the Barnes, but also know, if you don't already, that we are wonderful partners with the Barnes. I've given presentations there. Actually, right now, I am teaching a class through the Barnes on Lenape art and curation with one of our clan mothers. So, you know, the Barnes, aside from indigenous culture, is amazing, but also know that the local Lenape culture is often taught through there, and they should check it out and see if there's anything when they come visit. And here's the last one I had to throw up there. This is new on my radar. Do we know about the Philly Goat Project? Oh, the Philly Goat Project. Yeah, you heard right. Where is it? Where is this? Yeah. This is the Philly one. Kinwood Trail? Kingwood Trail? Is it? Now, Aubrey Arboretum is great. I have worked with people there. I've given programs there. It's been a while, but bring up Aubrey Arboretum, full stop. That's a great place. I didn't know they're related to the goat project. One of our other chiefs just said, I'm doing this goat program, and it's awesome. So I guess this place, I've seen these places elsewhere. There's like goat therapy and goat, and you go out and you walk with goats and you hike with goats. Well, they are also bringing us in. So while you're walking, one of our Lenape elders or chiefs will walk by and tell a story, tell you about people while you're walking with the goats. And you can best be sure that if you do that, we'll tell you the mountain goat story because we have one. So it's the perfect opportunity to tell it. But yeah, and here's our event on our webpage for that goat walk. But that's the last thing I'd say is that these are just a few examples, what I thought of off the top of my head and what we have going on right now. But our website, we have an events tab and it lists everything that's going on in the area. And really, most people think I live in Philly because I'm here so often, doing some kind of collaboration. So feel free to get in touch. We have a newsletter you can sign up for. So we'll just feed you whatever we're doing. We promulgate our events through the newsletter. But that's that. I think that is the last slide I had for you. So, one issue, thank you. Yeah, so question and answer about any of that and or more. Yes, sir. Oh.
Are you
doing
acquainted?
okay? Are they hearing me? Okay.
Does this work? Does this work okay or no? So try it. Are you acquainted with the Welsh Mountain area in eastern Lancaster County? And is that a place where Lenape is settled locally? If not, it's fine. But I'm wondering, are there communities in the area that you could identify that are places where Lenape is settled and stayed and to this day have sort of a presence?
And I'm sorry, what is the area you mentioned?
Welsh Mountain in eastern Lancaster County.
I'm sorry, I've never heard of that, so I can't place it. But absolutely, everywhere our people are is a place we've remained, right? But we do have our nation. Don't let our name fool you. We're called the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania, but that's because our tribal office is in Pennsylvania. Our people live all over. They live in New Jersey, all throughout our homelands, and all throughout the country and continent. But we do have a very strong concentration of members in eastern Pennsylvania in this area. So we are largely concentrated here, although not exclusive to it. And we have different elders that have grown up in different areas and have stories of their local areas. Like I said, my area is in the largely German settled area of the Poconos. But another one of our four chiefs, our chief keeper of ceremonies, he's very familiar with the Pine Barrens and the culture of the native Pine Barren community there. I've heard many stories about it, but not enough to tell them myself because it wasn't my community. So if you do have a specific area, you could email us that question. I could pass it to council and someone might say, yeah, that I grew up there. I know that those people.
So while I have the mic, I'm just going to ask a question.
Sure.
As tour guides, right? If we wanted to do some kind of acknowledgement, like a land acknowledgement as we start the tour, what advice would you give us or what suggestions would you have?
Email me. We consult on land acknowledgements for all kinds of institutions. We have a standard land acknowledgement. guidance that council has put together that I'll send you, but then we are happy to follow up with that and help you build one. It's got some good notes about language. For instance, we don't consider this land ours, and we never have. We ask that people refrain from language that reduces the land to our possession, like this land belongs or belonged to the Lenape people. We ask that people don't just frame us in the past tense. This is a problem we have. We acknowledge that this used to be the Lenape lived here before we came. Acknowledge that we're still here. So there's tips like that. But one of the most important things is, okay, you've made a great land acknowledgement. Now, what are you doing to support that relationship? The land acknowledgements can be controversial. And the problem that they bring is when people just say, okay, it's Indigenous Peoples Day. People are asking us why we haven't done this. Let's all put a line at the end of our email signature. Now we've done that. We can check that box off. We don't have to think about Indigenous people anymore, right? That's a problem, not only because it gives a false sense that you're doing something, but it gives a perception to the public that our people have more support than we really do. Because people say, oh, I'm seeing these land acknowledgements everywhere. Everybody must be helping the Lenape, when we don't know 90% of these people. It's just words at the end of an email. So this is an incredible example of how you can support that with a relationship, just being invited here to tell our story. And see, this group is incredible because every one of you is going to go tell the story to more people. And that is combating our erasure here. So, you know, programs like this are a great way to support a good land acknowledgement.
I actually have two questions. One, excuse me, I heard that William Penn actually learned your language in order to negotiate the treaty. Is that true?
That's true. I usually touch on that when I have more time. He didn't learn the full complexity of our language, but he learned what linguists refer to as a trade jargon, a watered down version, but good enough to communicate. And it wasn't just to negotiate the Penn Treaty. He did that because he realized that people were taking advantage of us by sticking these papers in our faces saying, hey, make these marks here. And we, having no ability to read it in good faith with these new neighbors, would say, okay, we'll do that. And he didn't want his people doing that. So after he learned our language, he trained people in our language and insisted that Lenape interpreters be present to explain those documents to our people.
Wow. And my second question is, I'm dying to find out, what is the story behind the turtle?
I'll say two things. First of all, and I'll say this very briefly because I'm the storykeeper and I can tell stories for days. One important part of the turtle is it's part of our emergence story. You may have heard something like Earth on Turtle's Back, right? Many people will say that's the creation story, the Lenape creation story. Technically, it's not our creation story. Our creation story involves how the world was created. But then the world ends up getting flooded, as it does in the stories of so many cultures, and then is rebuilt on the back of a turtle through some of our culture heroes. And that's why many Native Americans call this Turtle Island, because we're standing on the back of the new Earth that was built on top of a turtle. So that's the significance, and that's why you see here a turtle with a tree growing on him to symbolize Earth on Turtle's back. Sure. Yeah. Oh, maybe I should let you, so I'm not like zigzagging you all over the room. I'll let you take the mic to the whatever hand is most convenient for you.
I've read that the Lenape culture was matriarchal. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I resist the word matriarchal. The word that I think a lot of people mean to use is matrilineal, and that's absolutely true. We have an immense amount of respect for our women. In Lenape tradition, possessions and titles are passed down through the mother's line. Traditionally, if I would marry, we have clans in the Lenape people. We have the Munsee or Wolf clan, we have the Unami and Turtle clan, and the Unalaktago or the Turkey clan, three major clans. And as a Muncie Lenape, if I would marry a Turtle Clan woman, I would go move with her family and become part of that clan and culture. Also, we have the way we still govern ourselves in our traditional ways. We have a circle of council members. We have a number of chiefs. The idea of having one chief over a whole culture, that's an idea that came over the ocean with aristocracy. Our people always had multiple chiefs. But then along with the chiefs and the council, we have our clan mothers. And they are a group of the most respected elder women in the tribe, and they advise us chiefs and council on all the important decisions we make. Yeah. Oh, and just to add to that, the reason I don't like the word matriarchy is because that gives me the sense of like the crown and a queen governing over her people by, divine decree. And that's not at all how it works. So that's why I steer away from that word.
So I'm a volunteer at the Rose Valley Museum, which is outside Media. And there is a trail there called the Miquis Trail. And the Miquis Trail runs from the Susquehanna to the Schuylkill River. It's about 80 miles. And it's traditionally related to the fact that it was the beaver trading route for the Dutch, the Swedes, and the English, dealing with the Susquehannocks, which were part of the Iroquois. Now, they're coming into the Lenape lands. How did that get treated? As we do tours, we start off with the history of the valley. And the Miquis Trail is the first thing we talk about. And how did that relationship between the Susquehannocks and the Lenape? I know there's a lot of battles fought back and forth between the Iroquois / Susquehannock and the Lenapes.
Mm-hmm.
But how did they take control of that trail? And the Lenapes basically sounded like they weren't really involved with the beaver traffic.
This will feed into your question. So many people have heard that the Iroquois and the Lenape are enemies and always have been enemies. There's a grain of some fact to this, but you have to analyze why. And of course, it all comes down to colonialism. Here in Lenape territory, in Lenape-Hoking, we are on, and we always have been on prime beaver territory. It's been one of our major trade goods. We make almost many things out of the beaver. It was never like riches, but we traded it like our Western cousins traded buffalo. It was just something we had in abundance here. Now enter the colonists, and they come over here, they see beaver pelts and they love them, and they want as many beaver pelts as they can get. And they commission our people. They start paying us, pennies of what they're worth, but we don't know that. And they want literally everyone they can get. So all of a sudden, we go from trading with the few clans over for what they need to not only saturating the entire colonial market here, but also saturating the European market because they're loading them up on boats and shipping them over the ocean. And then they're loading them up on boats and taking them over to the East Indies. So all of a sudden, the Lenape are supplying the world in beaver pelts, and there's no cap on how many are valuable. And definitely many of our people in this period do lose their way and hunt more than they should, which is very taboo in Lenape culture. Now, what happens is the Iroquois play on the fact that our women take a lead culture. We were known as the grandfather tribe and sometimes the grandmother tribe. The Lenape were known as arbiters and peacekeepers, and the Northwestern Algonquin tribes would often come to us to settle disputes. So playing on the gender stereotypes of the Europeans, they go over, the colonists go over to the Iroquois and they say, these Lenape, they're just a bunch of old women. They're led by women. They're not fighters. If you help us get them out of here, you can take over that beaver trade and get rich. And unfortunately, some of our Susquehannock and Iroquois people succumb to that whispering. So they team up, and that's where the major conflict between the Iroquois and the Lenape come from. It's from the whispers of the colonists, the impression that because we have clan mothers that were just a bunch of old women who will be a pushover, and combined, they work to get us out. And then, of course, when they do, the colonists turn on the Iroquois and do the same thing to them. Absolutely.
I just have a quick question. We've been told from the Independence Historical Trust that they're going to move the Tamamed statue down at the end of Market Street, right here. Right here, yeah.
Wherever it is.
To more central, like Second and Market. And I didn't know if you had, anyone, you knew anything about it, or,
I
had
don't
been
know anything
approached?
about that, which
Okay.
is strange.
Yeah, because as tour guides, we're excited because it's kind of like a starting point, for a way, because we never get to talk about that
Yeah.
statue because it's in a terrible spot.
Well, that
For giving
I
a
don't know
walking
about
tour,
that. Yeah.
but if they move it, so I didn't know if you were.
No, and what's interesting is I think a little over a year ago, maybe even two, I was asked to come in to talk at a Philadelphia town hall where a resolution was being passed by Parks and Recreation to revisit every monument and street name in the city to evaluate it for cultural offense. I went to that meeting, and some of our other cousins did too. We spoke there, and we were told that we're going to move forward with this, and we'll be in touch to have you come out and advise on these. I haven't heard a word since. So that might be good to give them a little bump. I don't know if maybe the resolution didn't pass, maybe it failed, or maybe it did, and they just kind of forgot about us. That wouldn't be new. Not for Philly, just in the general history, Philly. But yeah, so no, unfortunately, I don't know anything about it.
Can you just say a few words about Tamamend? So that when we do have to talk about him, we have a little more info about him.
Yeah, I mean, Tamanend is one of our most celebrated chiefs. Now, I'm actually not the most knowledgeable in the history of Chief Tamanend. The most up-to-date and accurate information I can tell you is that we have a member who is named after him. I'm racking my brain to think of details, and you know what? I'm actually going to turn that down. I'm not going to say anything because I might say it incorrectly. I am not the historian of the nation, so I don't want to give you any misinformation. Yeah, but if you want to write and say, hey, can we have some information about Tamanend? I'll pass that to council, and they will get right back to you. Yeah, sure.
Hi.
Hi.
Why do you suppose the state of Pennsylvania Commonwealth has not acknowledged
Oh, it's people ask me
the
that all the
nation at
time,
all?
and I wish I had a good answer for you. I mean, it's politics. It's always politics. Never, right? The question on the table is never, should these people be recognized or not? The question on the table is always, if we recognize this tribe, what does that mean for my constituents, my campaign, my party? We had a big push 20 years ago, and the big hot button topic at that time was casinos. And our nation has never been interested in casinos as stewards of the environment. We've thought that would be harmful to the Lenape-Hoking. We lost that one. We have casinos here now. But that was a big factor that we felt harmed us because there was an election, the people wanted casinos, and all of a sudden we couldn't get a call back from anyone. Today, I think the biggest thing is there's no motivation, right? They've gone this long without it, without recognizing any Native people. So there's no one to reach out for help. There's no one to say, look, the Susquehannock are here. Why aren't you recognizing the Lenape? It is really a historical occasion for PA to recognize its first Native tribe. Beyond that, I mean, I can tell you, I'm on the recognition committee. I've talked to legislators. There are many out there who are very forward-facing and supporting of us. One of those pictures, if you didn't catch it, was with Matt Cartwright. He signed our treaty. Governor Wolf, back when there was Governor Wolf, said if a resolution would reach his desk advocating for support for us, he would give it serious consideration. It didn't get there in that time because that's a long journey up to the governor's desk. But I think one of the biggest things we've been missing up until now is the voice of non-Lenape people. There are hundreds of us, but compared to the number of constituencies politicians have, hundreds of people aren't that many. So that's why we have the letter writing campaign petition now. We've never done that before, but we thought this might be one of the things we were missing. And sure enough, we're getting attention now, so we hope that continues.
Couple of questions, actually. I know I was late and you probably already mentioned this. The way that you say the name of Philadelphia, the place of pines, I know I say it wrong, Koganakwa, but how do you really say it? And two, how do we get Lenape and Delaware? I mean, is there some confusion there? And number three, there's a sacred tree, I've been told, at 2nd and Walnut, 3rd and Walnut. Sacred tree. Do you know anything about that?
Okay, I can answer those in order. The first answer is, I'm sorry, but I have no idea. I don't know. I've never heard that pine word for Philadelphia before. But that's a question you can absolutely email to us. I'll give it to our director of language and she'll be like, hey, this is what it came from. I am one of our language instructors, but of our instructors in training, I'm like the bottom one on the rung. And in my head, it's not ringing any bells, but we have people who can definitely answer that. Then there was the Penn tree, but Lenape and Delaware. This is great to ask about. Sometimes at presentations I get asked, what was your relationship to the Delaware people? So I tell them very close, that's us. It's just another name for the Lenape people. What happened is a colonial admiral, Lord Delaware, came over, discovered our sacred river, and then they named the river Delaware after Lord Delaware. And as is very often the case, then they named the people after the major waterway that they lived among. So we got named Delaware after the Delaware River after Lord Delaware. So that is a colonial name. Now, I have to pause there to say, as a term of identification, that is self-identification, it's entirely legitimate. Many of our people grew up for decades and centuries being called Delaware, just like we've been called Indians, and very many of us use the term, we call each other Indians. Even though we know that's way off the mark historically and geographically. And I say that because you'll see nations of ours that call themselves Delaware Tribe of Indians. Please don't go email them and say, oh, Chief Adam said, you're doing it wrong. Don't call yourself that. That's the term that they identify with, and that's fine for them. But when you're talking about our people, Lenape is the best term. Is that the Penn? That's not the Penn Treaty Elm. No, then I don't know the tree you're talking about, unfortunately. And I don't know if you came in after I mentioned that I'm kind of a tourist in Philadelphia. So I'm sorry, but again, email us and I'm sure somebody knows about that more than I do. Okay, I'd love to learn about it because I teach in Philadelphia, so I'd love to be able to point to it.
Head and shoulders above everyone else in terms of European respect of indigenous peoples. But years ago, I heard a talk by Daniel Richter, and his historiography was that Penn also thought Europeans are superior, and he had seen the ravages of King Philip's War 6 years earlier, and he said, we're not going to do that, us basically here in Pennsylvania, we're going to treat them with respect, partly with the motives of getting what we want.
And that's a basic summary, but of his 20-year-old historiography, but feel free.
Yeah, no, Richter is good. And that's a detail I get into when I have more time for the whole presentation. Like I said, William Penn was not perfect. And he definitely did have perceptions of superiority. And if we look at his language, there are definitely things we can criticize in the way he talked about our people and the language he used. So he was not a model of 2023 equity by any means. But when you compare him to the other people of his time is when he really shines and you realize how revolutionary he was. What I recommend to people in my classes, I assign a book. It's got a long and obnoxious title. It's called William Penn's Own Account of the Delaware or Lenape Indians. It's just a collection of his letters. Now, these are all in the public domain, so you can find them all online. You don't have to pay for the book. But you can go and read his letters that he wrote to our people and that he wrote about our people. And I think that is the best way to get a sense of how he felt about our people, because he does refer to us as a godless people, as you know, savages or heathens. He uses words that are problematic, definitely has a superior European perspective. But within that dialect, within that language, he's talking about his great respect for our language, the way we conduct ourselves. He even takes a few nods in his letters to turn to his colonists and say, you know, you would all do a little better if you more closely emulated the Lenape people. So it's complicated. It's never black and white, and there are problems, and that has to be acknowledged. And once that's acknowledged, it also has to be acknowledged that he really was a radical despite those things for the fair treatment of our people. Yeah.
One thing I never hear is the Africans that are brought here in the Lenape. Is there any stories that brings those two groups together, and what is at least one?
Not just stories, there's an entire community. Our nation, the reason we have 4 different nations here in the homeland and 9 different nations across the country is because after our people were scattered, different groups had different paths on how they struggled and assimilated or didn't and survived colonialism. Our neighbors in South New Jersey, the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape, they owe their community largely to marriages between Lenape people and freed slaves. That's their heritage. And actually, there's a free book that they publish online. It's called We Are Still Here. If you look up We Are Still Here, Lenape, New Jersey, you'll find their website. You can also email me about it. And there's a whole book they published that tells that story of how they survived and how they married with freed slaves. Freed, you know what that means. So yeah, there's an entire culture, and very often our people have found companionship in the struggles that we faced. They're different, they're separate, and each deserves its individual attention. You never want to compare the sufferings of any communities that have gone through atrocities. But I also, you know, I give a lot of our partners are faith-based organizations. I present at churches of all denominations, multi-faith organizations, and a lot of synagogues. And the Jewish community also finds a lot of companionship in the idea of our diaspora and some of the struggles we've gone through. So we definitely have found community historically and still today with other people who have also faced oppression and some of these larger themes. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up to the question that was asked about your recognition as a tribe in Pennsylvania. What would be the advantages of that?
The thing about state recognition as opposed to federal recognition, state recognition in and of itself doesn't mean a darn thing. There is no standard. So every tribe in the country that has state recognition, what that means all comes down to whatever agreement was finally negotiated and reached. So you have to look at everyone individually. What concerns us, we are not interested in casinos. We're not interested in land. We're interested most strongly in those things that affect our identity. Things like at our cultural center, our clan mothers and our artists make crafts and they donate it to our nation and we sell them to raise money. Our cultural center, we get no money from anyone, you know, we're all volunteer. I don't get paid from the nation to be here. So our cultural center is run by volunteers, very often our youth who come in. And all day when they donate 4 hours on a Saturday to sit at that cultural center, they have to sit next to a sign on the wall that we have to post there by law that says these crafts are not Native American made. They are in Native American style. And that is because there's a law that the only people who can sell their crafts as Native American made are government recognized Native communities. Now, there's some good to this idea because we don't want anyone just running off into the woods, tying a feather to a stick and saying, look, I make Native American crafts. We appreciate that we want to keep that authentic, but the way they're executing this is wrong because it's a direct attack on the identity of the people that the government have ignored up until now. Just one other of many examples. We want to be brought to the table in issues that come through that threaten the environment here. In New Jersey, we've been crazy active our entire existence in stewarding the environment. We fought the Tox Island Dam, we fought the Penn East Pipeline. Right now, we're partnering with our friends in the community in Chester who are trying to stand up against a fracking gas hub, displacing a bunch of that community. So we fight those fights, but we only know about them because one of our wonderful partners brings it to our attention. Nobody has to talk to us. Nobody has to let us know that these things are happening. In New Jersey, if you're doing a project like that, there's a council of state recognized Lenape that are informed about it. Now, they can't point their finger and say that goes through and that doesn't, but they at least know so they can come and take part in the discussion. That's another huge thing. So the things we're working for affect our identity and our ability to continue our culture and protect the homeland. Yes, yeah. We
Great,
do.
so let me just say the question is, do you have any friends in the state legislature who keep you abreast of these issues?
We some of the legislators with whom we've met are very helpful and support our struggle for recognition and also keep us informed of things. And others don't or need to be prodded more. Yeah.
No one else? I just had one quick thing. I know when so I've been trying to get Adam to come speak to us for 2 years now. So I'm very excited he's finally here. We were playing email tag for a long time. But in my search for a Lenape speaker to come and present to us, I got a lot of, I don't know what the word is, flack from different organizations saying, oh no, you know, don't go to the Lenape Nation of PA. We're the ones in Oklahoma. We're the only real ones. And I was like, whoever comes speaks to it. I'm really happy if somebody would just come. I don't really care from where. I mean, I just want to let you know, an actual Lenape person. But can you just speak a little bit to that, what that just really briefly, what that conflict is?
Absolutely. And it pains me to speak on this, but it's also really important to speak on this because it's one of the most direct examples we have of colonialism in action today. For people who say, okay, this stuff happened, but it's ancient history, like get over it, move on, let's have a new conversation. Yeah, this is one of the things you can point to, and there are 1,000 more, and say, look at this. So colonialism has never succeeded anywhere in the globe without divide and conquer tactics. turning Irish citizens into G-men to inform on their own people, turning multiple citizens of African countries, the military taking them in, arming them and training them to go attack their own people. Everywhere colonialism happens, it can only happen by turning a people against each other. Because by definition, when you are colonizing a space, you are going in as a severe minority. And there's no way 6 boats of people are going to take over a country unless you can find a way to turn that country on itself. So this is the only way colonialism can succeed. And unfortunately, we have not been immune to that. So as I mentioned, there are only 5 federally recognized tribes. Now, of those 5, we work wonderfully together with 3 of them. We do language projects with our relations in Canada. I was actually certified as a language instructor in Wisconsin with our cousins there. But our 2 Oklahoma tribes are still adamantly resisted to any nation that is not recognized by the federal government being acknowledged at all. And that extends to our other 3 nations out here too. They don't want people talking to the state recognized tribes. In fact, they're right now actively trying to get state recognition taken away from some of our tribes. Our northern cousins, the Ramapo, the harassment got so bad that they have a lawsuit right now against our Oklahoma cousins. It's terrible. And you know, we reach out to them, we try to open our arms, and we still try, and we hope that that rift will be divided. But, and this is when I go to talk to a political science class, I'll talk on just this for 2 hours. So again, this doesn't do it justice, and there's a lot to talk about. But one thing I always emphasize is that I do not blame our cousins in Oklahoma. I don't always agree with the way they persecute our 4 nations out here, but the ultimate blame isn't theirs. It's the people who came along, all but decimated their entire people, and then took a couple handfuls of people and said, okay, we'll give you some land and a place to stay and leave you alone. And you know what we'll also give you? We'll give you some money. We'll give you access to government funds. But here's the thing, that's a zero-sum game. So anytime any other tribe becomes recognized and is allowed to put their hand in that pot, that means less for everybody. And I think it's the colonial process to take away, then to offer scraps, and to keep those scraps scarce enough that the few people that are lucky enough to have them have to fight off anyone else from having access. And that's where I think the blame lies, in the manipulation of our people by the government.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Thank you again. And thanks for the nice turnout tonight. And again, remember, next month is our holiday party, and election. So very important. Hope to see you all there.